I'm George Allan Rose. I go by the call sign GAR. Not really a call sign, it's my initials. I got tagged with it in pilot training when we used to have to initial off everything. Somebody said, GAR, and it's stuck. A lot of people don't understand it. Anyway, I started off in the Cessna 150s in ROTC, T-37, T-33 in UPT, and then into the backseat of the F-4 in 1966. First combat tour, 6 and 7, then to Europe, 67 until 71. Back to Seymour Johnson in the F-4, had upgraded to the front seat, didn't need him. Went to linebacker 1, or what became linebacker 1 in April of 72. Got shot down on June the 21st. Longest day of the year, literally and figuratively. Anniversary's coming up pretty quick. Didn't even think about that. Anyway, 9 months and 8 days in the slammer. Fortunately, it was not roughed up too badly. My predecessors had took the brunt, and the story is well known now. Came back from there, went down to Eglin in the test business for a bit, and then I got the dreaded assignment to go work with the Army for 3 years in Germany. Worst job, greatest assignment. We were in Stuttgart. We had a mission, but realistically speaking, any kind of a surprise attack, we never would have gotten out the gate. You know, we had 83 pieces of gear we had to take out with us, trucks, trailers, and stuff. Stick them all together to make a air support operations center. It would have been interesting, to say the least, because the roads would have been clogged with everybody heading westbound, all the Germans, we think. And actually, the Corps commander one time made a statement when he was getting a GDP brief. He said, "You know, I don't think you guys are going to have to fight this on your own." He said, "I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. If you could believe it, a Corps headquarters with no helipad." Kind of go, okay. Anyway, came back from there with the help of a dear friend of mine who told me, he said, "Gar, you don't want to go to the F-16, F-15 community. They're eating each other up alive." He said, "How about go fly the A-10? I said, okay, I can do that. Came to Tucson in September 79 and retired in January of 86 and went to work for Hughes and then became a camp follower to my wife. She took a great job in Sacramento, and I flunked cooking and housekeeping 101, so I went back to flying, flew for American Eagle Airlines for 10 years and quit finally in 2000. I said, I'm too old to be getting up at 3:30 in the morning. So, and we were in Houston at the time, and we said, well, let's go back to Tucson. So we came back to Tucson to a house we'd built here, and 2 weeks ago we sold it. Now we're going to go to the old folks' home, Air Force Village. It used to be called, down in San Antonio, where I joined up at 4 or 5 of my good friends there, including my squadron commander from Vietnam. So.
Very cool. But some good stories down there as well. Some good beer and some good stories.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Shiner. Oh yeah.
Shiner Rock down. Yeah.
Yep. Pearl.
Yeah. So let me start at probably the most fundamental question is just, you had a huge career in aviation and in the Air Force, but who were the people building who you were as a child? Was it your family? Was it relatives?
No, my mom and dad. My dad was a basketball coach at the University of Arkansas for 23 seasons. Pretty strict disciplinarian. We never hurt for anything, but then we weren't overly. My sister and I finally agreed after years that, yeah, we never were overindulged, were we? No. Anyway, but he told me, he said, I guess I was sophomore, maybe a junior in high school. He said, you don't seem to have any real ambition to do anything other than, borrow the car and go see girls. And he said, I want you to go up to the placement office and take the aptitude test. So I took that Minnesota, whatever it was, 1,001 questions, and came out that a pilot and a force ranger. Oh yeah, and an accountant. So time marches on. I fulfilled the forest ranger thing in the summers when I was in college. And then the accountant, I was doing real good till I met a girl and spent more time concentrating on her than I did on thing. And Dr. Bob Dixon said, you know, Allan, I tell you what, I'll give you a C if you'll drop out of accounting. Yes, sir. That's all he had to say, because I knew what was coming next. I went into marketing. It was just a means to an end, because when I was 5, 6 years old, we were living in Nacogdoches, Texas, and on what then was Air Force Day, which would have made this sometime in 48, 9, I guess. The bomb wing at Carswell that had B-36s put on this massive fly around Texas thing, and they sent out 3 B-36s in flights of 3, and they flew down every major highway. Well, Nacogdoches was on Highway 59, and of course it was publicized, and so we're up on Main Street, I guess. Heck, I don't know. And I said, that's pretty cool. I said, I think I want to do that. And so that's my first thing, and just kind of pursued it from there. Everything else was kind of ancillary, and girl I was dating in my senior year, her dad was just beside himself. He could not believe I just wanted to go off and fly airplanes and didn't want to go to law school or med school, something like that. So we're driving back up to Fayetteville after a football weekend, and she said, well, you know you flunked. I said, flunked what? She said, the interview. And we'd had lunch with her dad, who was a high-powered lawyer. As a matter of fact, he was the, what do they call it, the president pro tem for the American Bar Association. Meaning, I guess he took it over a year or 2 years later. Anyway, we're sitting there. I never had a drink at noon in my life, you know. So we're in this really nice top of the rock at one of the hotels, and Ed says, "How about a scotch, Allan?" I was not a scotch drinker, but I drank scotch that day. And so anyway, Kathleen told me the way. So you know, we graduated, and the next day I headed off to Colorado to fight fires again until I went on active duty, and she went off to Europe with a bunch of girlfriends on a tour, and there the twain would meet again. So anyway.
Well, everything works out for a purpose, which is always good.
It really does, Chris. Yeah.
That's good. So I can see where they got the you may be a fighter pilot. I'm not sure where they got forest ranger or accountant, but I'm glad you obviously got into fighters. At what point did you say, I'm not going to try this out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a fighter pilot in the Air Force? Was there some moment or just...
Yep. My first flight instructor was a fellow named Carroll B. Arnold, captain. He had been an F-86 driver, and when he started phasing out the F-86s, he went to a NORAD site up in Sioux City, Sioux Falls, one of those places up there. And the only way he could get back in the cockpit was come to ATC. So he came down to Laredo, and he was probably...
Oh, sorry, 1 second. What? Oh, we'll be here at 4 o'clock. We coordinated to call the desk, and they'll let us out. Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to lock up. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
So you were...
Yeah, so we were sitting there, and, you know, of course, Pop 2, when he comes up, and he may have come just slightly above my shoulders, had a little pencil line mustache, and, you know, heavy-set jowls, and introduces himself, shook our hands, and, you know, after he said at ease, and it just had the little get to, you know each other thing, and he goes to Stu Mosby, who, as the world turns, is going to be our next door neighbor down in Blue Skies of Texas, the former Air Force village. He dropped that on us 2 days ago. My wife said, I may have to kill him. Anyway, because, I mean, our class to this day is still very tight. Anyway, so he said, Lieutenant Mosby, what's your, you know, if you graduate from pod training, you know, you've heard that, if you graduate, what's your aspiration? He said, I'm going to fly the F-4, sir. I'm going, what the hell's the F4? You know, what about you, Lieutenant Rose? I said, I want to fly the KC-135, sir. He said, why do you want to do that? Well, I want to get airline. And he had these little glasses. He looked over the top of them and he said, we'll see about that. So come one foggy morning in Laredo, he comes, okay, come on, Rose, we're going to go fly the weather ship. And this is back before there was any kind of radar control, except for, GCA was about it. I mean, you literally found your way back to a point in space where surveillance radar could pick you up. Anyways, we took off. We're flying around, and in the Rio Grande Valley, you get these layers of clouds low, and it's got occasional hot air thing swirling up, and so he calls them cathedrals. So we're back in these caves and going around the cathedrals, and yanking and banking and turning, and we're taxiing in, and he said, excuse me, he looked over here, he said, you can't do that in a 135. So time passes, and Arnie goes on up to Sandoval, but he was, Friday night at beer call, he was right there with our class and whatnot, and I always had a soft spot for it. Anyway, so he told us, he said, okay, when you get your block assignments, do not turn those in until I get to see them. Okay. So one dark and foggy morning, Stuart and I woke up to Sandoval and walk in, report in a military manner, and say, sir, you'd requested. He said, you're damn right I did. So we put our blocks on. He looks at Stu, and Stu had F4 to use SAFE, F4 to TAC, F4 to PAC-AF, F4, it didn't have ADC yet. And all fighters, And he looks at mine, he goes, how long you been fucking with me? I said, since my dollar raid, sir, because I had F100, F105, F4 to Europe, F4 to TAC, F4 to PAC-AF, and he went to his grave still pissed, I think. Anyway, so he had a tremendous influence on me. And when I came back in 73 out of prison, we went through a little rebluing, updating thing down at Maxwell. And he said, we can find anybody in the Air Force you'd like to talk to. I said, I'd like to talk to Carol B. Arnold. So our next break, Wayne Lobestall, a guy I'd been stationed with at Spangdahlem, said, hey, GAR, okay, let me get Major Arnold on the phone for him. Major Arnold, I said, hey, Arnie, it's GAR. He broke down. He said, I'm so sorry. I talked you into going into fighters. I said, Arnie, what the hell are you talking about? It's been fun except for the last 9 months. It's been a great career. So we stayed in touch for a while. He was up in Mesa, and at one time he wasn't there, and he had passed away. Never got to see him again. Guy who flew with at Cameron Bay, Art Christopoulos, huge influence. That whole outfit. Then we had a squadron commander in Europe, a guy named Felix C. Fowler. There are a lot of us around today who eventually went on to be squadron commanders, and we say, we wanted to be like Felix. And Felix would always say, pardon me, I must leave, for there go my people, and I am their leader. I have to catch up with them. And he was a people person. And a lot of what sometimes for a while there during the total PC era of the Air Force, I'd see guys out here at DM, I'd say, you're just a butthead. You're just thinking about where your next assignment is. So anyway, Felix was a huge influence. A guy named Bud Taylor, squadron commander at Hahn. Disciplinarian. We still have reunions of that squadron occasionally, and we always get up there, you tell the story, put your hand in a bucket of water. You can talk as long as you can keep your hand in there. Well, Bud's widow was at the last one we had down in Austin, And so I started, telling this Bud Taylor story. His nickname was Scarf, because that's back in the day when the Dickies were in, before you had just the scarf type thing. And he'd give you more crap. We were down at Wheelers once, and I'm walking across the flight line, and the wind is kind of what it is here today, turn you sideways, and I don't have my hat on. Bud pulls up behind me in his, little staff car, and he says, "Put your hat on, Gar." I said, "Yes, sir." Put it on, held it on like that. And he drove off and left me. Well, now the flight line at Wheelers was just a huge concrete expanse. It was designed for B-47s as a reflex base. I'm going, so I finally got over to ops, and he said, "Oh, by the way, you're on the ALS going home," which is riding Old Shaky, C-124, nonstop. Wheelers Air Force Base, Libya, to Han Air Base, Germany. Oh, yeah. No smoking, because we had jet engines on board. And you kind of go, oh, God, how are we going to... Anyway.
So,
go ahead.
So you were able to get into fighters out of pilot training. Sorry, which pilot training base was that again?
Laredo.
Okay, Laredo.
Yeah.
And then you got your first assignment as a what? What was your first?
Backseater in the F-4 to Cameron Bay.
Okay, so you were a GIB, as I've
Yeah.
learned now.
Yeah.
Obviously, vitally important to even where we are,
Mm-hmm.
the missions of being able to dive in and do that kind of stuff. So, how did you? You learned how to fly. That's part one of being an Air Force guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then to become a part of the mission, how did you adopt to saying, "Here's the war. Here's what's going on. Here's how I can get good at it"? What drove you to say, "I'm going to get really good at this"?
You just you don't work at it. You do or die. And we had a couple of guys that you said, well, I had a flight commander on the second tour over there. Great guy. When I came home, he said, "Okay, I'm going to have to cut this mustache off now." So we had a riverette party up in at Bowling, I guess it was. And that was part of the gig. I had some scissors and cut his mustache off because his thing was, we called him McBush, Tom McNiff. But he, occasionally, just like he would tune out. And we're up in lower North Vietnam one day, and he just had a little tune out. And I'm going, if under other circumstances, he could get people killed. So I went to the ops officer and told him about it. And I said, I'm scared for him. I said, guys are going to not want to fly with him if he keeps this up. So I suggested to Tom, I said, have you ever thought about getting our flight to be night owls, do night sorties? And so they took two crews, not me, but Tom and somebody else, and they started flying night sorties, escorting the gunships. And he was great at that, so anyway, he was the first one I went to Arlington for.
Well, when you so you're a second lieutenant at this point still?
Yeah.
The guy in back,
Yeah.
in a combat zone. Who did you turn to for support? Did you have older, World War II guys that were still mentors or peers that were
These were, let's see, I don't know that we had any World War II guys.
Okay.
We had some Korea. I flew with one guy, Alex Martin, and we were on an FCF. And he was talking about, he had flown A-24s, A-26s, something like that. And talked about landing in Hanoi to turn them over to the French when the French were fighting, Ho Chi Minh and his gang of hooligans. I'm going, jeez. And he got passed over for lieutenant colonel while we were there. And he said, I'm not just real sure why I'm fighting this war, except it's fun. Anyway, he finished his tour and went on home.
Yeah.
Like I say, you adapt or we had one guy who went on a 3-day pass to Japan just to let me go up there, have a few beers and get laid and, come back. And he never came back. And turns out he was an active duty guard guy whose time was up. And he said, "To hell with it, I'm going home."
Yeah.
And anyway, he was eventually asked to, retire, resign from the Guard. Anyway, you just go with it. And by front seater, Ark was stopless. After a little bit of time, when he saw I kind of had, a knack, he said, "Okay, you lead one, I lead one." And so I would do all the briefing and do it all from the back seat. He had to raise the gear. I did everything else. He had to squeeze the trigger on the gun if we were going to strafe. But other than that, I wasn't dropping bombs because I couldn't see straight out. But it was, learned a lot from that. Learned a lot into debriefs. We had a squadron commander, Bill Shower, who was a stickler. And he would fly on a wing sometimes. He was one of these guys that said, "Yes, I should lead." But he said, "I also need to sit back and watch you guys." And I went through a couple of debriefs with him that were really, at the moment, thinking, "God, he's ripping my ass." And that evening over at our little squadron bar, he's coming up and put his arm around me. And he said, "That was a great flight today. But remember what I said in the debrief?" He said, "Let me buy you a beer." So he'd buy me a 15-cent Crown beer, which is made out of F-105 shells. Church key worked one time, and that was it. Anyway, so all of a sudden, there I was. I got selected to go to fighter weapons school in Nellis as a backseater. It's a program. They just wanted, actually, they brought pilots, but they were looking at we were already starting to get the WISOs, navigators. So they ran us through to kind of say, "Okay, here's the platform, the level field." And that was great until the day we graduated, and the guy says, "You can't wear the patch because you're not a graduate." And we had been briefing missions. We had been doing everything except, we didn't get to do the butterfly pattern and all that kind of stuff, But that's what it was. So every time I went somewhere, I said, "Can I wear the patch?" "Sure."
Yeah.
So
That's
my
good.
party suit still has one.
Oh yeah, the party suit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Made in Korea or whatever. All
Yeah.
right, make sure the audio is still going, as I like to do. Yep, good. Do you need some water? Can I
No,
crack
I
one?
got it right here.
Okay.
Right here.
Good. You're doing great. I was like double check focus. Make sure we're good. Looks good. Okay, looks great. Good. Perfect.
I would like to tell one story on my squadron commander from
Yes.
Spangdahlem, Felix C. Fowler. He had been at Da Nang in the 480th, I think it was. Anyway, older guy. He had flown in War II, got out. He was a cop in Cleveland. And I forget what crisis came along, but he was in a reserve, so he got called up. He was flying 84s, maybe. Anyway, I got called up and went to Holloman and was there in the F4 in the, I forget what wing was even there at the time. Anyway, they deployed to Da Nang and, no, at a George, 48th, yeah. Anyway, deployed to Da Nang, and he becomes the squadron commander over there. And just a great guy. And so when we get to Spangdahlem, I'm the first backseater in this 9th Squadron because we're transitioning from the 105 to the F4. Well, a lot of the F4s are going over, the other way, and so we had a trickle of F4Ds coming in. Anyway, one of the flight commanders comes over and he says, "Hey, Lieutenant Rose, would you like to go to Aviano tomorrow?" I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm taking the chief of maintenance down, and Colonel Fowler says, our squadron commander is going to be another airplane, and he suggested maybe, the new guy would like to go." And I said, "Sure, okay." Now, I had not turned a wheel in 2 months, something like that. No briefing. I met Felix at the airplane. So we're taxiing out, and he's sitting up there smoking a cigarette. I went, "Oh my God." Anyway, have you ever been to Spangdahlem?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's got some up and down hills and whatnot, and kind of a fun place to taxi. And he came up on hot mic and he says, okay, this is what we're going to do. He said, we're going to lead the formation takeoff. And he said, I'll do the head nod and put it in burner for you, and you got it. Just stay on our side of the runway. Holy shit. Okay. So off we go. You know, he does the head nod, he does the gear retraction, you know, and the flaps. No, don't have flaps. Maybe we did. I forget. Anyway, and on we go. Cold mic. So we're flying to the Cid, which goes out towards the southeast. Then you turn, and you hit Strasbourg, and then you go through France. And he said, okay, do you know how to make the position report? I said, yeah, it's right here on the 21A. He said, okay, you got it. You know, the French get pissed when you can't pronounce the names of their towns. So we get to Lux A, which is just beyond Strasbourg, and I say, we're there at this time, going to be in Dijon. I forget how to pronounce it, but anyway, I called it Luxil. They didn't even goddamn answer me. So we get to the next one, and they accepted my close interpretation of Dijon. Then the next one was Lyon. And I said, and lying next it, and this guy says, if you're going to fly in France, learn to pronounce. Yes, sir. So we go down, the weather's crappy at Avianos. So we go down and we spit off the colonel, and we're in a holding pattern, and you know, I'm beat, literally, you know, going round and around and whatnot. So we finally, you know, they say, okay, we can start the descent, and it's a penetration turn. So coming down there, and the F4, you know, the gauges are up here, you know, so you're coming through in the penetration turn, passing out 11,000, something like that, you know. Felix comes up, hot mic. He said, you know, Rose, how, you know, when you show up at the base, new base, how you're supposed to review your Form 5 and certify that it's correct? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, he said, my Form's 5 pretty big, but so he said, I thought the other day when I got in here a couple of weeks ago, I would go through it and just see what was there. He said, you know, I bombed this base in 1944, December. And my cross-check went to shit. I tell you, going, holy cow. Well, we had nothing to do except wait for the colonel to get it ready to go back. So we caught a ride down to the Rod and Gun Club where he said, these are the best hamburgers in Europe, which is true, or was at the time. And just sat around and chatted. And he became, you know, over the ensuing year, an idol, you know, and a mentor, and a friend. So
that's exactly what paints the Air Force as a good thing, when you have people like that to look to.
Yeah.
All right, let me make sure. I like to be. You just described something where, you know, aviation and flying in the Air Force was really good. You know, you got to have the burger.
Yeah.
You got to see something that was really cool. You got to go across France. Tell me, and I know you had the prison part, but tell me the good thing. When you think back about the Air Force and you get a smile on your face, you know, is there a particular mission or flight or just a time of your life in the Air Force that really stands out to you?
We deployed to Ubon in 72 as a squadron. We weren't over there just piecemeal, you know, coming in. We were in the middle of an ORI at Seymour Johnson. And the Vietnamese were doing their thing, and we were going, you know, something's going to happen here. And so we go in for, I guess it was going to be an air defense exercise at 4 in the morning. We look around, there's only captains and majors. We're thinking, where are the heavies? Anyway, the squadron commander comes in and he says, I can't tell you anything, but no phone calls. Actually, they'd already sealed off the phones. No phone calls or anything until I get back. So he comes back and he says, okay, go over to mobility, get your mobility bag, take the dirty underwear out of it, take it home, and pack it for real. Well, where are we going? He said, I can't tell you. Well, we were the Alpha Squadron for TAC for the deployment, and you know we could go anywhere. Well, do we pack warm? Do we pack cold? What if we're going to Europe? I would just go to BX and buy something. Okay, pack, for hot. And I had ridden my bicycle down that morning, so I'm riding back with my mobility bag on the back. My wife comes down. She was going to the commissary. She says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Got to go home. I got to repack this thing." "I'm going to the commissary." I said, "No, come on home." So, and she had my son riding along in the back or on the bench. And, "Okay, well, what's up?" I said, "Well, I can't tell you, but we're deploying." "When?" I said, "Tomorrow." "What?" "Yeah." I said, "Report to the queue at 6 o'clock tonight. We have dinner, start the low residue meal, and tomorrow morning at I think it was 9 o'clock or something like that, we release brakes and go." So, when all this started, the ramp was had all kinds of pallets and crap on it. Our guys, the base, cleared that thing out. Because all of a sudden, here come the 130s and the 141s for real. And they're putting real shit on there, And anyway, so, we do our thing, go down. The wives got to come to the chow hall in the morning, briefly. Then we went down for the briefing. Said, "Okay, here we go." And so I was number 5 in a six ship. And we go to the down Life Sport and get the plastic extra or aluminum bottle for the water, a couple extra pedal packs. And, oh, by the way, they told us exactly where we were going that morning. Next stop is Hawaii. You know how far it is from North Carolina to Hawaii? It's a long way. So anyway, off we went. And I was number 5 with Louis Lambert, Bob Lambert, who had been off TDY on some other strange program, was not even current in the airplane. Came back, but he was one of our most experienced guys, and Shock said, "To hell with it. Louis is going to go as your wing in number 6. Okay. And he's going to take your back seater because Pete can refuel and Louis might have a little trouble." He hadn't been, he hadn't flown there for probably 6 or 8 months. Anyway, so off we go. And I had 8mm, there goes Shock taxiing by, and somebody, and then, okay, there's the ramp, and, oh, there's all the wives over there. Then, okay, there's Shock and his wing, boom, burners come on. There, then 3 and 4, boom. I said, "Oh, time to put the camera down." Off we went. And I had a tank that wouldn't feed, and it did not feed all the way to Thailand. So when everybody got to go in and make their Tiger pattern arrival, here I'm coming in, and straight in. I was such a straight in. I was behind a B-52 going into Guam, But anyway, that whole deployment and the camaraderie, and we have reunions about every 2 years, still very, heavily attended. And my backseater actually came back last year. We were in San Antonio, and he came back from Saipan. Took him 19 hours to get here, spent 2 days with us, and 19 hours back. I'm going, "God damn, Pete, what'd that cost you?" He said, "Mac schedule just kind of worked until I got to Travis." And he said, "If you don't buy your tickets in advance, it costs you a lot of money to fly." I said, "Yes, it does." So anyway, but it's a special trip. I had not seen him in probably since 80, somewhere along in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a long time.
Uh-huh. And I'll cut to the main points that I would love to hear in your words is just what other organization or thing in the world would have a person do that? Is there you don't do that at Raytheon or
No.
Would you describe why the Air Force is special to you?
Yeah, it's the camaraderie, the ability to have fun, fly great airplanes, the F4 and the E-10, fantastic airplanes to fly. The adventure, going different places, walking across the ramp at Wheelers, going into Aviano. Just, it's all together. Han, strange place. The French built the base right after World War II. And of course, they asked the Germans to say, well, you know, this is in their sector. You know, we want to build an air base. Where should we put it? Oh, right over there. You know, historically, the worst weather in Europe. Well, you know, because it was kind of isolated. We had an air defense squadron and two strike squadrons, fighter squadrons. And over the years, it is amazing how many people talk about the cohesiveness of being at Han. We were 65% manned. You do 2 days on alert, take a day off, go back and fly for 2 days, take a day off, go back on alert. Oh yeah, and then throw, you know, a TDY in there somewhere because you got to keep your, you know, currencies up, you know, bombing and so on. As they say, the ops tempo was literally off the chart. But hey, we were satisfied. You know, we were having fun. You know, we had great camaraderie among the wives, which, boy, they're the backbone. You know, if your wives are not on board, shall we say, you're hurting. So anyway, Han just, and it, you know, we have our own Facebook page. You go in there and look, and every now and then you'll see somebody's name and you go, golly, I haven't thought of that guy since, you know, 1971 or 2, whenever. And a lot of people say, we didn't know it at the time, but it's one of the best times of our life. And so we took our son Glenn back over there on the birthright tour right after Desert Storm, and went up to Han. And for retirees, normally you have to wait till 6 o'clock to check in, and so found a billeting, which had changed, and I said, we'd like to, you know, see if get a room, you know, get on the list for 6 o'clock. The guy said, how about a VIP room right now? What? Okay, so I'm filling out the stuff, and I said, I don't recognize this service squadron. I said, what happened to the 50th Combat Support Group? He said, oh, the wing was deactivated while the guys were down in Desert Storm. They had people come over from the States to help the gals pack up, and off they went. I said, geez, I didn't know that. Of course, now it's a Rhine-Main auxiliary, and you know, FedEx flies in there. You know, so anyway, it was the cohesiveness, taking care of each other, looking out. Everybody was a wingman. Yeah, your wingman every now and then you get a miffed at them, but you're always there, you know, if they need you. So, but that's kind of my thing about the Air Force is a great life. Yeah.
And on one more, you know, happy note, let's say you had one of these girls come over to you and say, like, I'm thinking about flying also, or some kid walking through the museum, you know, I think I want to go be an Air Force pilot. What would you say to that person?
Full on, go for it. And this is what you got to do. You got to, in today's environment, I think you've got to be a little more dedicated than I was. I mean, you've got to have this as the goal. And so you know, for openers, start working so that you can go where you went to school, to the Air Force Academy. Yeah, there are others, pilot training slots coming out of ROTC and whatnot, but the Air Force Academy is the hotbed for pilot training. Do that. And be prepared. Maybe to fly something you really didn't have in mind, but, you know, it's the mission, and go from there. Now, people have asked me, what, you know, do you think you could lead a woman in combat? And I quite frankly have said no. I said, I am from the old school. I've refueled off of tankers with female crews or female boomer and whatnot. That's no problem. But when I'm given what we call in the A-10, called the 5-line brief, and I get a feminine voice back too, that just, I haven't been there, but I just have a feeling, you know, I don't know that I would be as aggressive as it might really need to be. And I know a couple of gals that just did amazing jobs. One gal that flew back from Baghdad, you know, tail shot to pieces. She had Kim.
My classmate from the academy.
Oh, okay.
1997 also.
Yes. You know, killer story. Just, you know, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, she was going to retire, and she put out an email the other day. She said she had accepted another position at the academy in teaching leadership and character. I wrote back, I said, ooh, did they pick the right person?
Yeah.
Oh, she's something else.
Yeah.
And Soup is not going to be, a house hubby.
Yeah.
He's going to retire. So anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, and we're closing out of time, so I'll be really careful here,
Okay.
mindful of the time. But in the closing moments, you've obviously had some extremely high highlights. You've been able to fly some of the best aircraft, some of the best men in the force, and obviously you've had the internal strength and fortitude to be able to get through some really tough times. And so, really, what my desire is to know what drives you when times are tough. What kept you and keeps you going.
Well, in the POW experience, it was, every day's a new day, and almost every day there was some straw in the wind, and occasionally it was a whole bale of straw, particularly in Linebacker 2. You just got to call on your inner self that you don't even know is there, and you just work with yourself, period. And it's no magic. Everybody says, "Oh God, I couldn't do it." I said, "You'd be surprised what you could do." It's inner strength, family, service, country. I tell you, when I'd already been captured and shot, and the two wingmen came back right down the valley where I was. Of course, I'd been hustled off into this pit to hide. Sort of coming out of the pit, I'm looking around. It's made out of 370 and 600-gallon drop tanks. I'm going, that would be real interesting. And the all clear was a hollowed out 750-pound bomb that obviously a dud. And interesting. Anyway, it's just we all have, I think, this inner strength, inner drive. My son's a great example. I'm not going to go into any details, but he's been through some stuff that just, wow.
Yeah. And is it a combination of faith and family and country, or is it just family and or what is your?
No,
what's your
it's all not necessarily a religious faith in the classic, God is my co-pilot thing. It's just you have to have faith in something, and normally it's going to be just yourself, And when things are down, you talk to yourself. And my mom used to say, it's okay to talk to yourself, just don't answer. See, that's what they get the straitjacket.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And when you knew that you were going to come home, when you knew that was going to happen, can you describe the feeling? I know it's impossible, but
yeah,
try to describe it.
Well, we knew the first night we were playing No Peaky Bridge. We would use the toilet paper they gave us and little pens that we would steal and whatnot to, so, okay, 4 clubs, and sit there and just put them out to kill time, or hearts, something like that. Anyway, we were playing No Peaky Bridge, and this F-111 came in the front door and went out the back, and they dropped a string of 12, not too far away, actually it's on a barracks position we found out later. We go, wow, okay, war's on again. And because there've been all these things, all these bales of straw flying through the air, and you go, okay. And then here comes the first wave of buffs, and then the next one, and the next one. And we go, wow, okay. We knew that it was in a win. We just didn't know when. And after, the 11 days of bombardment was over, and those guys, they knew that the crazy one, as they called Nixon, if they stepped out of line, they were going to end up back in the Stone Age, not just on the verge of, but in the Stone Age. And interesting picture back over there of the B-52 raid of a rail yard. Anyway, we were, of course, told how the release was going to go, because that's what the hierarchy had gotten the word out. This is the way we want to come out. There's a young man named Doug Hegdahl, who was a Navy seaman postal clerk. And he went out on a cruiser one night to just watch the bombardment and was in the wrong place. Boom, just a shockwave knocked him off the boat. So he was in the water for about 13, 14 hours. Then, bring the Levi's over the top of your head and, get air in them. Anyway, got picked up by the Vietnamese, and they were convinced that he was some kind of Looney Tune. And so the powers that be said, get him out of here. He also happened to have a photogenic memory. Get him out of here with all the names, and this is how we want the release to go. Okay, so he went back, little T-39, landed in Don Muang in Bangkok, and he said, get me a tape recorder right now. Anyway, so they knew, sick and wounded, then order of shoot down. Well, we started after they had read us how it was going to happen. We got all realigned in order of shoot down, and spent the last 2 months that way, or about 2 months, and then on a certain date we said, boys, something's got to be happening here. One of our guys, Navy guys, Steve Rudloff, we're in siesta time from about 1 to 3, something like that, locked up. And he said, you hear that? You hear that? No, what? He said, 141. Sure enough, all of a sudden, over these banana trees, goes this white 141. And of course, camp erupts. Guards are going, uh-oh, we're going to lose control. Anyway, so we said, okay. As it turns out, that was the first one, and he was told to go around because there was a last-minute glitch when he's on short final. He's on HF with the National Command Post, in the Pentagon. Anyway, so so every 2 weeks, and there was one hiccup in there. There was a 15-day period, and then we got our go-home clothes. We got stuff that they had taken from us. I didn't have anything taken, but P.K. Robinson had 2 $100 bills. Came back to him. So we're expecting, they had a nice meal, and we're all excited, and early morning we see Joe Kittinger, who is a senior ranking guy, walking across the quadrant there by himself. But he's in long clothes, which is not good. And he comes back out, and we see him come out. He goes over to each cell and says, ain't going to happen today, boys. What happened? We don't know. Whoa, okay. Despair. Boy, we all get a good night's sleep. Next morning we look out, and here's 3 or 4 buses out there. Okay, put on go-home clothes, put those on, steal a couple of things, get on the bus, go out to Guyalon. And the whole thing was just, and not knowing what to expect. We didn't know Operation Homecoming. So this public affairs guys were coming into Clark about an hour out or so, and he says, okay, let me tell you what's going to happen. He said, when you get to Clark, you've seen the crowds. Holy sheesh. Okay, then we get to the hospital. Good hot shower. Had to wait a day till we got the really good meal because they wanted to check us for parasites. And anyway, then next day, tailored uniforms, boom, like that. Next night, trip to the BX. And then somewhere in there, I went to visit a grade school, talked a little bit to the kids. And then a few years passed, I go to get my farts and darts hat when I made lieutenant colonel. This little girl over at clothing sales said, Colonel Rose, do you remember when you came to my school as a captain? Anyway, it was incredible. Then we get to Hickam, and walking down like people with leis and all this, and I hear this, Allan, and I look up, and here's 2 of my classmates from grade school, junior high school. So we got to chat for a bit, and then get to Andrews, which is my home hospital, closer to Seymour Johnson, and get off, and it's rainy, and it's cold, and the senior guy gets to make a little presentation. And I got through it. And I looked over there. There was Glenn and my wife, Becky, my mom and dad, Lee Alton, escort officer. Anyway, Dad's holding Glenn. He said, put me down, put me down. So Becky comes out first, and there are pictures that ended up in worldwide news of him running right behind him. Hell of an event, as you could tell.
Yeah, no, and I'm so thankful that you're back, and I'm so thankful that we have a country that will try to work to bring you back. And my main closing question on this is that you've suffered some of the hardest parts, and you've also got to do some of the greatest parts of being an American citizen. Did that experience help you to feel, if this is the right way to phrase it, more a part of America's story, or did it make you just feel like this was just part of being in the military?
I've never thought about it that way, Chris. A deep gratitude to everybody involved in, from Rosie the Riveter to, a few dissenters out there I don't really care to meet. But I did see Joe Baez one day when I was flying for American Eagle, sitting in San Jose and having a hamburger. I look up and say, I don't believe this. Anyway, no, it was just all wrapped up. Would I change anything? No.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't want to get shot down again, but no. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you first stepped onto that C-141 and smelled America, the oil and the hydraulic fuel.
The JP4 coming out of the APU. Yeah. Well, the nurse's perfume overcame that. And the guys, there wasn't a junior person on there. They were all techs and above. And, of course, once we got airborne, the cigars came out, and, it was something to behold.
Good. I'm glad, because I always see the picture, and everyone looks happy, but I've never,
Yeah.
have been able to speak to someone who's
Yeah.
one of those.
Actually, the pictures used the most was, depending on whether it's a full up, I'm the last guy on the left in the sixth row, I think it was, or I'm not in there at all. It depends on how it was cropped. Yeah.
Well, my closing question is simply, if you were to tell a future generation about your Air Force, the Air Force you were a part of, what would you say in closing comments? This is the Air Force that I've handed off to you. What would you describe it as?
Make sure you take care of your people, to the leaders, and to the NCOs. Remember, you were a two-striper once when you walked out of Lackland. Remember what that was like when you walked into a new base. When you walked into a new base as a butter bar or first lieutenant or major, remember what that was like. Treat people like you want to be treated, but don't forget the mission. And the mission is to fly, fight, and win. And be prepared. Yeah, whether you're flying like you did with the UAVs, is that what they are? Whatever, the drones. Yeah, regardless of what you're doing, or if you're pumping gas, whatever your job is, do it right. And that.
Well, I salute you. I thank you so much for your time too, and your family's time over here for coming out. And like when I looked at the walls of the academy, there's the POW flag, and the pictures and the stuff, and probably like you passed by them and they don't mean as much. So hopefully we'll be able to share this.
Yeah.
And share that.
Well, we were up there last year for a reunion, and
there we go. Yeah.
Is that the picture?
That's incredible. So yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Ron Yates, spent a couple of nights with them. He was heavily involved with that whole project, and he said, okay, we're going to go down to the honor graduates, whatever it's called, the walk now that leads down to the POW thing. Okay. So we're sitting there, and here's a thing for Ed Meckenbauer, who was, up in the slammer for a good bit. And I'm reading his thing, and he said, do you know Ed? I said, yeah. I said, great guy. I said, he actually went back. His last mission before he retired was to go back and bring some remains out. And his voice behind me says, he's my dad. So Anyway,